Hello there friends and welcome. For today's Pathfinder guide we have at long last a Prophet of Pestilence build. And you'll be the lord of all debuffs. First through deadly poison spells that can easily and instantly crowd control whole enemy packs including the toughest enemies even on unfair, into complete submission with higher than 70 DC, while also constantly draining enemies of their stats. Plus of course inflicting all other sorts of nasty debuffs like exhausted, fatigued, level drain, nauseated and sickened, so it truly is the complete package. And you do it all as a Demon Lord, as you'll be going with the Demon Mythic path for the highest difficulty class bonuses to both our plagues, diseases and poisons. Last but not least, you even have a friendly and cute centipede pet to complete our Lord of Diseases fashion. So without further ado, let us finally get into our Prophet of Pestilence guide, first with the core mechanics of the class. The Prophet of Pestilence most unique feature is of course your Plague of Abaddon. You'll get it at the second level, and well, the enemy has to make a fortitude saving throw or become infected with multiple debilitating effects, but at the very beginning it's only gonna be one. As through the Carrier of Disease feature, you'll also be able to first pick the initial effect of the plague, and later upgrade it with more powerful and debilitating effects. There's a lot of stuff here, but it all begins with 1d4 ability damage to one stat of choice, with many other powerful options later like automatically having the plague spread to nearby enemies, also level drain, making enemies sickened, fatigued, exhausted, even flat-footed automatically. And all of these effects will stack on top of whatever you pick for the plague, so it will just grow stronger and stronger. Unfortunately, you are rather limited in the upgrades you can pick because you only have what, 3, 4, 5 plague effects, as the game doesn't really let you replace a hex for another plague upgrade or a feat for that, because a lot of other classes, including Shaman or Witch, can trade a feat for example, an extra hex. This would really have helped increase the power of your Prophet of Pestilence. Now there is one big downside to the plague, at least very early, and it is the fact the range is very poor, melee touch range only, which of course can be dangerous because you don't want your Prophet being that close to the enemies, as you're not meant to be the main tank of the party. There are some ways of overcoming this, however. First, the plague itself will upgrade to a much higher range when you reach level 8. Second, you'll have buffs like Enlarged Person, which can increase your range by virtue of size increases even early. And of course, from level 5 onwards, you'll have a very nasty spell that can easily crowd control enemies, so they won't be able to react to your plague even at close range. Anyways, it's still a very fun ability, especially since you have infinite uses of it. But don't expect it to be overpowered and win battles just by itself. It's not gonna work like that. It's more of a nasty debuff. And until level 10, it's mostly going to be about dual ability damage like Dexterity and Constitution. Now, the Prophet of Pestilence still has a lot of other unique features. First, you'll automatically be granted the Pestilence Spirit as early as level 1. And it has multiple abilities. The first one, Plague's Caress, will let you sicken enemies on a melee touch attack. I wouldn't really bother with this, because your plague is just way better. Second, you'll have Rapid Spread starting from level 8. Whenever enemies hit you with a melee weapon without reach, they have to succeed on a fortitude save or be automatically inflicted by your Plague of Abaddon. This is also kinda useless, I'm afraid, because here's the thing, it only works if the enemy deals damage to you, which means their attack has to hit you. Kinda disappointing because you don't really want to get hit in this game at all, especially on the higher difficulties. On the other hand, the second upgrade is very powerful, as it will highly increase the range of your Plague of Abaddon hex. Lastly, at level 16 you'll get Fatal Disease. Whenever an enemy rolls a saving throw against your spells and abilities with the disease descriptor, they must roll twice and take the worst result. Of course, amazing to ensure your plague will hit. Now, the Pestilence Spirit also provides you with another very nice and unique benefit, as it grants you 2 spells no other class in the game you get access to. The first is a level 7 spell called Breath of Nothingness. And it's quite a stacked spell with multiple benefits. First, it only hits enemies in a very big burst around your character. Second, will deal uncapped 1d6 points of damage per level. Third, also drains the enemy's levels, which means 6 when empowered and maximized. And lastly, even if they save against level drain and damage, they'll have to make another save or be knocked down, which of course is quite debilitating. The only downside is that as a spirit spell only, well, you can only slot it in your spirit magic slot. And you only have one per level. Since it is a level 7 spell, that's only for level 7, 8 and 9 through meta magic. Lastly, we have the Living Plague spell. It will affect everyone inside a 20-foot burst area, which means it does have friendly fire, unfortunately, unlike Breath of Nothingness. Anyways, it's a very cool looking spell, as I do believe it has a unique animation even. And it's all about draining stats from enemies. When you first cast it, everyone inside will first suffer 46 points of HP, which is kinda poor, but most importantly 1d4 points of ability damage to all stats, and be affected by Parasite Infestation, which means every round they'll keep on suffering from these effects, for more damage and more stats drained. Lastly, the area itself will be considered difficult terrain, so slow characters down, and for every step they attempt to move inside the area, well, they'll take more and more ability damage. Unfortunately, this spell has friendly fire, as I mentioned, and is not affected by the selective meta magic, even from rods, which is very disappointing. As whenever anyone inside dies, it will summon hostile, fiendish parasite swarms, which also drains enemy stats by, well, just existing near them, like any swarm. Overall, it's a very unique spell, that's for sure, but is it worth it? I don't think so, because at the point you get it, ideally you would just instantly kill enemies with a level 9 spell, or crowd control them into submission, especially for something that has friendly fire, right? So I'm afraid the best use is for flavor and roleplaying only. Unlike Breath of Nothingness, which is a staple of any Prophet of Pestilence. Lastly, you have the Mutating Strain feature, which makes you immune to Sickened and provides bonuses against effects that cause nausea or disease, later immunity to nauseated, poisons, and disease, and most importantly, increasing the DC of your plague and all other diseases by an extra +2. Your capstone ability, 1000 Diseases, would also be amazing if not for the fact I'm pretty sure it's bugged at the moment. But essentially, by just moving towards the enemies, they'll constantly be afflicted by the plague, so you won't even have to activate it. The bug, however, is that against most enemies, besides the initial target, the plague DC seems stuck at 11, which of course is dreadful, right? Even at level 1, you'll have higher DC than that. So you'll essentially never hit the other enemies automatically. Overall, I do think it's a very fun and unique class, but it would definitely have been way stronger if once again you could get more plague mutations through extra feats or your hexes. Now let us get into our Prophet of Pestilence build. For race I'll be going with humans as always, but it's not necessary, as this character will have a lot of free feats starting from level 11+. For background, I'm afraid as usual Street Urchin and Pickpocket, this character really wants the highest initiative possible even early, not just to debuff the enemies with your plague so your other allies have an easier time killing them, but also for easily crowd controlling whole enemy packs before they get to react through powerful poison spells like Stinking Cloud. For your stats, Wisdom is the most important one for the highest DC on both your plague and spells. So start with 20 as you'll be going with the Demon Mythic path, which can make this into an even score later through demon buffs. The second most important stat is Dexterity for the highest initiative. 14 is actually enough, but if you really wanna min-max, feel free to dump both Intelligence and Charisma because they are completely unnecessary for this character, and have as high as 16 Dexterity, or by dumping Strength, 18 even. The reason is simple. I didn't really build this character for attacking, although you do still have enough potential for that because of the Demon Mythic path. It's just that I imagine if you're playing a Prophet of Pestilence, you'll want to just spam the Plague forever and ever, or your powerful crowd control spells that stun lock enemies with one cast anyways. so why bother attacking? Plus, with Demon, you can still have high strength, even by starting with 7. Anyways, it's not necessary, you can also go for higher strength if you prefer, and not dump your other mental stats. But for min-maxing, this is the way to go. And then 13, Constitution. For skill points, only the wisdom-based ones, so lore, nature, and religion. For level 1 feats, it's all very simple. For once, we aren't going for attack and cleave, as I want this character to be focused into debuffing and spells. So instead, improved initiative as early as level 1, followed by the new ambuscading spell feat. This will make flat-footed opponents take a massive -2 penalty on saving throws against your spells, which of course has amazing synergy with initiative, because if you're acting first, all enemies will be automatically flat-footed at the start of battle. Now, Shamans don't really have any amazing crowd control level 1 spell. You might as well just settle for sleep, at least for the first dungeon of the game, but you'll get very nice ones from level 3 onwards, which is still very early in the game. For Deity, any that fits the Mythic Path alignment you want. And don't forget, the Prophet of Pestilence has to be either neutral or neutral evil and chaotic evil, so won't work with all Mythic Paths. Anyways, I'll just go with Mummy Argatoa. Even if you aren't going Lich as undead, she is still the main goddess of disease. For your first plague upgrade at the 2nd level, ideally Dexterity, as it is the best overall for the early game. Draining the enemy's dexterity means they'll have lower armor class, which of course is amazing, to ensure your other allies will hit them. And early on you won't have many buffs to increase attack rolls. Then for our level 3 feat, because this is when you start getting amazing Conjuration crowd control spells, it's time for Spell Focus and Conjuration. And by the way, the unique Pestilence spirit spells like Living Plague and Breath of Nothingness are also Conjuration, so there's a lot of synergy with the spell school. But anyways, this is when you get the highly powerful Winter's Grasp, also a newish spell. Well, it's essentially Grease but better, because it hits double the area, also deals damage, also has a built-in saving throw debuff, and knocks enemies down. What's not to love? Just don't forget it has friendly fire, so don't cast it on top of your allies. At level 4+, you'll start getting hexes just like a normal Shaman or Witch. And well, this will depend on if you want more buffing potential or debuffing. Now you might consider picking the classic Evil Eye as your first hex, if only because the Plague, as I mentioned before, has the very annoying close range limitation, touch range even. Evil Eye on the other hand is medium range. And at this point they are essentially the same. Evil Eye is even better because it's a -2 to the enemy's, let's say, armor class. Since we picked the dexterity mutation, you would have to roll the maximum amount, 4, for the same effect to the enemy's AC. But like I said, you'll have other ways of overcoming it, like size spells or just waiting until level 8 for the Plague range upgrade. I decided to go with buffing hexes instead, if only because you can't really combine hexes and the Plague on the same turn, as they all cost a standard action, unlike spells which you can quicken and then combine with the Plague. Plus, of course, for stuff like Evil Eye, you have Camellia, Ember, other party members with hexes. This is why I'll be picking Protective Luck, which is amazing for your tanks, and ideally pre-cast before battle starts, so during actual battle you can just use your Plague. For our level 5 feat, it's time for Greater Spell Focus, Conjuration. After all, this is when Shamans get the highly OP Stinking Cloud spell, back from Kingmaker with a vengeance. It is now one of the best spells in the game, just like in Kingmaker, once again because the Mythic Corruptor ability lets you bypass enemies' immunities against both diseases and also poison. And well, what can I say, it hits a huge area, will constantly nauseate enemies and nauseated enemies can't do anything at all besides move, lasts for a very long time even if they leave the cloud, bypasses spell resistance, and just in case you are wondering, if you have the Delay Poison communal spell to provide immunity against poison for all allies, it will still work, even with the Mythic Corruptor feat, so your allies will remain immune while enemies will not. For the second Plague upgrade at level 6, go with Constitution. Constitution damage will reduce the enemy's hit points, which of course also makes them easier to kill, but also their Fortitude saving throws, which means an easier time hitting both your Stinking Cloud and your Plague, as they're all Fortitude based. For our level 7 feat, we'll want to start increasing the power of our Stinking Cloud to the max, so Meta Magic and Heightened Spell. With this, you can turn Stinking Cloud into any spell level above level 3 for higher spellcasts and higher DC. And honestly, the spell is so good with Mythic Corruptor that it is actually better than any level 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 offensive spell you'll have as a Shaman, besides the special Breath of Nothingness from Prophet of Pestilence. Then for the second hex at level 8, another buffing hex, Fortune, because by now it will already last double the amount for 2 rounds. For our level 9 feat, it's all about another meta magic, this time Persistent Spell, as through this you can force enemies to roll twice against your Stinking Cloud, even if they make the save first. Level 10 is when you finally start getting good plague upgrades besides just ability damage. There's a lot of stuff you can pick here. As much as I would love to pick Contagiousness to make the plague area of effect, unfortunately it will make all nearby creatures suffer from the plague, including your character and party members. And well, I assume you don't want your own allies getting hit with ability damage and a lot of other nasty stuff, especially because achieving immunity to disease is very hard in this game. I mean, there's spells like Ice Body, but they are higher level spells and won't work on all party members. Only the Angel Mythic Path has a spell that provides party-wide immunity to this, so I'm afraid it's not really an efficient option. Something fun is picking Vulnerable Host, which will reduce the enemy's fortitude saving throws by an extra +2, of course stacking with the Constitution damage. Otherwise, if you want to reduce the enemy's armor class, you can go with Dulled Reactions, or Drain Bodies, which has both Fatigue and Sickened. Sickened reduces attack rolls as well. If you don't care for extra effects, you can also increase the ability damage to Constitution and Dexterity by 1 step for 1d6 instead of 1d4. I would personally go with either Drain Body for Sickened and Fatigued, or Vulnerable Host. I do think Drain Body offers more though, because if they're Sickened, they're already taking a -2 penalty to all saves, attack and damage. For level 11+, you can kinda go with whatever feats you want. For example, if you want more melee martial power, well, you'll have stuff like Outflank, also Weapon Finesse if you min-max your Dexterity, and you know the classic stuff like Power Attack, Cleave, Cleaving Finish, and so on. I decided to do something different, as you don't have to attack, you can just spam your Plague or spells, and go for higher Dispelling potential, with first another new feat, Dispel Focus. Because by default, the only thing missing from the Demon Mythic Path as far as spell power is higher Dispelling potential, as you already have higher spell DC and higher spell damage. And this will be just in time for the level 6 Greater Dispel Magic spell, the best way of dispelling enemies, outside of other Mythic Paths like Lich and AEON. Once again, you can easily cast Greater Dispel as soon as battle starts, through a Quicken Meta Magic Rod as a swift action, and then drop either the Plague or Stinking Cloud on top of the most powerful enemy. And if it's dispelled of their buffs, chances are it will die, or get hit with the debuff. For another hex, you might as well pick Chant. Here's a fun cheesy thing. Chant still works to extend Fortune Hex if you are a Shaman, because Allcat only nerfed it for the Witch variant, which is Fortune plus Cackle. Fortune for Shaman still OP. But who knows for how long. For level 13, since we are going the Dispelling path, Greater Dispel Focus. For another Plague upgrade at 14, you might as well go with Erode Body, which will make enemies exhausted, for a crippling debuff to their strength and dexterity, and also has a secondary similar effect to Stinking Cloud. Whenever they make an attack or cast a spell, they have to succeed on a Fortitude saving throw, or lose an action and become nauseated. So the enemies are pretty much doomed, because even if they save against your Stinking Cloud, chances are they'll still get hit by Erode Body. For the level 15 feat, Dispel Synergy. If you dispel even just one effect from the enemy, they'll take a -2 penalty to saving throws against your spells for 1 round. Also amazing to ensure your Stinking Cloud will hit after dispelling enemies. You can of course also pick this as early as level 13 if you prefer, and switch the order with Greater Dispel Focus. For another hex, it can be anything you want, you might as well pick Ice Plant. Then for level 17, the last Dispelling Enhancing Feat. Destructive Dispel, which can stun enemies after you dispel them. Is it necessary? Not really, but like I said, you can go with whatever feats you want. Level 18 means our last Plague upgrade. At this point, I would just go with Virulence, as it essentially doubles the amount of ability damage you'll deal as Constitution and Strength. Now, as much as I would love to remain a pure Prophet of Pestilence, as I explained before, your capstone ability 1000 Diseases is bugged, so there's no point in picking it. So in the spirit of increasing your spellcasting DC to the max, we'll go with the fun Fighter and Titan Fighter dip, as it lets you dual wield two-handed weapons, which of course is great because you can dual wield staffs for the maximum DC possible, just like in Baldur's Gate 3, it's the same logic. And at this point you do have the best spells in the game already. And well, the last feat can really be whatever you want. For fun, let's go with Improved Critical and Quarterstaff, and either Power Attack for higher damage, or let's say Outflank. Toughness also works. And you can also pick the Bolster Metamagic feat, just to combine it with your Breath of Nothingness unique spell. The last level can actually be whatever, but you might as well return to Prophet of Pestilence just for more spell slots. Now let us cover Mythic Progression for our Prophet of Pestilence Demon. For the first Ascension, either Instrument of Freedom to buff allies with holy damage, or Close to the Heavens for healing potential. I suppose you could also go with Danse Macabre, which will increase the DC of your plagues against some enemies in the game, like undead, but only a very minor amount. For Mythic level 1, the choice is a given Corruptor, of course, so both your plagues, diseases, and poisons will bypass immunities. After that, it's time to start increasing our spellcasting power, so extra Mythic ability and abundant casting, as you'll want as many spell slots as possible for higher casts for all spell levels. After all, Stinking Cloud can be made into any spell past 3. And you also have your buffs, so for Mythic level 3, improved abundant casting. For Mythic level 4, you have a few options. If you want higher Conjuration DC, pick Spell Focus, Mythic, and Conjuration. But you can also delay it for later. Something very fun with this character is Sorcerer's Reflex, as it lets you cast the first spell after your initiative roll, which is super high, as a swift action, so you won't have to rely on quick and metamagic rods that much. And this of course helps you combine both Stinking Cloud with the Plague of Abaddon on the same turn. For the first demonic aspect, as always, I already have a main demon path guide you can check, where I cover each in depth, but you keep it simple, Incubus for the win, because it's the main one that increases DC for both spells and your Plague Hex. For Mythic level 4, it depends, you can already pick Second Spirit and ideally Nature, because it's the best of them all as it provides you with the pet, which will fully scale to your level. The pet only comes at level 16, however. But Mythic 5 is pretty close to that if you're doing all content of the game. Or you can delay this for Mythic 7, at which point you'll definitely be level 16 already. And already get into greater abundant casting right now. Then for the second aspect, Nabasu, for the Fortitude saving throw debuff aura, plus it also reduces enemies' attack rolls. For the greater aspects, Balor to share rage with allies, followed by Shadow Demon for the bonus to Wisdom for the highest Plague and Spell DC. For Mythic 6, either Sorcerer's Reflex, or if you already picked it before, Mythic Focus Conjuration. And then the aspect of Succubus, to reduce the enemy's attack rolls even further. But since you can only have 3 minor aspects at the same time from Mythic 8 onwards, early on you just want Incubus and Nabasu. And for Mythic level 7, it is finally time for Second Spirit and Nature, followed by Vavakia for the bonus to Strength. It's just that the other ones don't provide any good bonuses for passives. Then you can pick whatever other minor demonic aspects from now on, because you already have the 3 best ones. For our build anyways. For the pet, I'll be going with the Centipede because it is the most thematic for a Poison and Plague build. Sadly, even though it has Poison, at this point enemies will just be immune because you're mostly fighting demons and you don't share Corruptor with your Centipede. So it's mostly for flavor, but of course you can go with the dog or also the wolf as usual for min-maxing. Or anything else you want. Once again at this point, everything is at full power. Then for Mythic level 8, Mythic Initiative at last, just in time for the Demon Lord battles. Of course, you can also pick this earlier, as opposed to Sorcerer's Reflex or Mythic Focus. Mythic 9 can be whatever you want, even if you aren't a frontline character, you might as well grab Last Stand just in case. And for the first Demon Lord aspect, Sock Off Ban Off to force enemies to save twice and pick the worst result. By the way, this does stack with your Plague feature, so they're actually rolling 3 times. Mythic 10 can be whatever you want, but ideally, extra Mythic ability, and then let's say, Mythical Beast to increase the power of your pet. Even Master Shapeshifter can work because demons do have all the nice demon shape-changing spells, if you want to be a Plague Lord, Balor, or whatever. Followed by Aspect of Nocticula to share all rage powers with one ally of choice. Now let us cover gear for our Demon Lord, Prophet of Pestilence. For the Amulet slot, ultimately the Heartstone of the Night Hag Queen for the huge bonus to spell DC plus 3. This is chapter 5 only, but for chapter 4 you have the classic Valexia's Magnifying Amulet, also Amulets of Initiative for chapter 3. Armor doesn't matter for this character, you can go with whatever you want, I just have Haramaki's here for the passives, but as a Shaman you can equip up to medium armor. For robes, ultimately the Robe of Determination, as it provides the highest bonus to fortitude-based spells, so a +2 to your DC as opposed to the +1 from the Robe of the 7 Sins, although it's still useful when it comes to dispelling enemies by virtue of the higher caster level increase. It's just that it doesn't matter for your crowd control spells. For belts, just belts that increase your dexterity earlier for initiative, but ultimately belts of physical perfection for the biggest bonuses to all physical scores. Gloves also don't matter, I just went with Enduring Wizard here for some extra hit points. The same for boots, I have Ronic Sacrifice for the highest initiative by virtue of +8 dexterity, but you can leave this for a dexterity focused character if you want, like a Rushalee, Lan or Wendwag. For helmets, first headbands that increase wisdom, ultimately mental perfection ones for the biggest bonuses to all mental stats. Glasses don't matter much, I just have Resmir's Mask here, because it does let you cast a spell as a free action, which of course is amazing. Unfortunately, most of the spell DC boosting gear for the other slots here is, you know, enchantment or illusion only, and our Stinking Cloud is Conjuration, but you can still have super high DC. For cloaks, early on just Cloaks of Resistance, but for chapter 4 plus the Mythic Demon Cloak, as it does let your stats increase even above the norm, from the Demon Major Aspect bonuses. For rings, you absolutely want the 7 Virtues of a True Ruler, as it will double the amount of demon rages you have per rest, and all of your powerful abilities rely on demonic rage. Besides that, just the Ring of Guiding Star for the huge bonus to initiative. I didn't really bother with Triumphant Advance for this character because I don't see much of a point in attacking when you have hexes and spells. Which is also why I didn't go with the Braces of Slaughter, just Braces of Armor or whatever else you want, including the lucky bracers you start the game with. Now let us cover weapons and Quickslots. And well, for weapons it's all about staffs. Starting with War Mage for the highest bonus to spell DC. This will be your best friend for most of the game until you get the Titan Fighter dip, which of course lets you dual wield it with something else. The best second option is the Dagger of the Betrayer, as it has the same benefit of War Mage, an extra +2 DC for +4 total, which results of course in a net benefit over the Sin Mage Staff for spell DC, but of course, just like the Sin Mage Robe, the Sin Mage Staff is better for dispelling enemies. Also, don't forget the Plague of Madness staff, just the name itself fits our build, but its unique ability of maximizing and empowering spells once per battle, because you can just use cantrips before to proc the effect, is amazing for extra damage on your Breath of Nothingness. As far as Quickslots, it's just mostly meta magic rods, especially Quicken for Stinking Cloud, and don't forget the duality of Conjuration and Summoning, a must-have for any demon build, as eventually it will provide you with a scroll of Resourceful Rage, which increases your demon rages by an extra +1 per rest. Oh, and I almost forgot, but the Undying Love of the Hopebringer shield is also amazing for any poison or mind affecting or disease build, as its unique dark aura will debuff the enemy's saving throws against these effects. But of course you can just have it on another companion. Lastly, the Triceratops statuette should provide you with a pet if you want, before you would get the second spirit nature, at level 16+. Well, alright friends, so this was it for our Prophet of Pestilence Demon Lord build. If you found this guide useful, as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and also consider becoming a channel member if you can. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for watching, and see you next time, friends.